If you've ever walked away from a conversation wondering why people drift, pull back, or suddenly grow quiet, this is for you. Because sometimes it's not the loud mistakes that hurt us, it's the soft ones. Let me tell you something tender, raw, and necessary connection is fragile. And most of the time, the things that damage it don't roar. They whisper, they hide behind our good intentions. They slip into our sentences without asking for permission. And people pull away not because you're unworthy, but because they're tired, sensitive human. And today, I want to speak to one of the most hidden culprits. Habit faint one, talking to be heard instead of talking to understand. You know that moment when someone is speaking and instead of listening, you're preparing your response, crafting your opinion, sharpening your defense. It feels normal. It feels efficient. It feels like participation. But in reality, it sends a message, your words matter less than mine. People may not call you out. They won't roll their eyes. They won't confront you. But they will retreat quietly, slowly, and eventually completely, because when you talk to be heard, conversations stop being conversations and start being competitions. And humans don't bloom in competitions. They wither. Sometimes we interrupt not out of arrogance, but out of eagerness. Sometimes we explain too much because silence makes us anxious. Sometimes we jump in because we fear being forgotten, but none of those soften the impact to the other person. It still feels like your need to speak is more important than their need to be seen. So here is the shift I wanted in your chest. Don't listen to reply. Don't listen to judge. Listen to witness. Listen to witness. Listen to honor. Listen to sit with someone's truth without needing to fix it. Because when people feel understood, they feel safe. And when people feel safe, they stay. Let me speak this gently, but honestly, one of the quickest ways to drain the life out of a conversation is to keep redirecting it back to your story, your pain, your experience. And here's the hardest truth. Most people who do this don't even realize they're doing it. They think they're relating. They think they're connecting. They think saying, that happened to me too, is a bridge. But sometimes it's not a bridge. It's a spotlight. And when people are sharing something tender, the last thing they want is for the light to suddenly swing away from them. Imagine someone finally opens up about feeling overwhelmed. They're trembling a little. Their voice cracks. They're handing you something vulnerable and fragile. And then you respond with, I totally get it. I've been so stressed lately, or that happened to me last year and it was even worse. You didn't mean harm, but harm still happened, because in that moment, the conversation stopped being a sanctuary and turned into another stage where they felt invisible. People don't stay where they feel invisible. People don't open up where they feel overshadowed. People don't trust where their emotions get swallowed by someone else's story. Here's the deeper truth beneath all of this. You don't have to prove your understanding by matching their pain. Sometimes the deepest empathy is silence. Sometimes the deepest connection is saying, I'm right here, keep going, hold space, let them finish, let their story breathe before you offer yours. Let their pain have a moment before you introduce your own, because conversations are not competitions for who has suffered more or experienced more. They're invitations, soft, sacred invitations to stand beside someone, not in front of them. And when you learn how to hold that space, people don't just like you more, they trust you more. There's something quietly exhausting about people who speak in shadows all the time, the ones who meet joy with warnings, hope with doubt, excitement with, but they don't shout, they don't argue. They simply drip negativity into every conversation until everything feels a little heavier. Maybe you felt it too. You share a dream and someone says, be realistic. You share good news and they say it won't last. You share plans and they immediately list what could go wrong. Here's the truth we rarely say out loud. Negativity doesn't need to be loud to be destructive. It erodes connection the way slow water carves stone, quietly, steadily, relentlessly. Most people aren't trying to be pessimistic. They think they're protecting you. They think they're being practical. They think they're offering wisdom, but intention doesn't cancel impact. And the impact is this: people stop sharing with you, not because they don't care, but because protecting their own emotional energy becomes more important than including you. The human heart gravitates toward people who bring warmth, not weight, people who bring oxygen, not fog, people who lift, not drain. And I want to say this clearly, gently. You don't have to be endlessly cheerful to be lovable, but you do have to stop treating hope like a threat. Not every conversation needs your skepticism. Not every dream needs your caution tape. Not every joyful moment needs your reminder of what can go wrong. Sometimes people just want you to stand beside their excitement. Even if you don't fully understand it, sometimes they need you to celebrate them, not correct them. Sometimes the bravest thing you can say is simply, "That sounds wonderful. Tell me more." Because positivity isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing not to be the weight people have to carry in every conversation. And when you release that habit, something beautiful happens. People stop avoiding you and start seeking you. There's a certain kind of pain that appears on people's faces. So small you might miss it when they're sharing something vulnerable and the person across from them rushes to fix it. They weren't asking for a solution. They were asking to be held, to be understood, to be witnessed without judgment or instruction. But unsolicited advice sneaks in like a thief. It steals the moment, it steals the intimacy, it steals the safety. And here's what so many people never realize. Advice can feel like criticism wearing a polite mask. When someone says, "You should try this," or "Here's what you need to do," or "You know what your problem is," it doesn't sound helpful. It sounds like you're doing it wrong. You're not smart enough to figure this out. I know better than you. Even when that's not your heart. Even when you meant kindness. Even when your intention was pure, the trouble is advice assumes a hierarchy. It places you above them. It places their struggle below your certainty. It makes the conversation about your expertise instead of their experience. Most people don't want a map. They want a companion, someone who's willing to sit in the dark for a moment instead of pointing at where the light should be. So here's the shift, the healing shift. Before offering solutions, offer presence. Before telling them what to do, tell them you're here. Before trying to fix, just feel with them. Say things like, "I'm sorry this is heavy. That sounds incredibly hard. Thank you for trusting me with this. Do you want comfort or advice right now?" Because asking that one question, comfort or advice, can transform an entire relationship. It shows respect. It shows emotional intelligence. It shows humility. People stay close to those who make their hearts feel safe. And nothing creates safety faster than someone who listens without trying to take control of the moment. There's a quiet loneliness people feel when they sit with someone who talks too much. It's not the noise that hurts them, it's the disappearance of their own voice. Some people dominate conversations unintentionally. They're passionate, they're expressive, they're excited, animated, full of stories, but somewhere in all that energy, something tender gets lost. The room becomes theirs, and everyone else becomes a guest. Imagine this dynamic. Someone asks a simple question, "How have you been?" And suddenly it becomes a monologue, a performance, a winding story that lasts 20 minutes. Everyone else quietly folds up their thoughts. They shrink into the background. Their words wither before they ever get spoken. And the person dominating the conversation walks away thinking, "That went great. I talked so much," while everyone else walks away thinking, "I don't think they even know I was there." Domination is not always loud. Sometimes it looks polite. Sometimes it looks charming. Sometimes it looks like enthusiasm. But the impact is the same. People feel erased. And here's the deeper truth. A conversation is not a stage. It's a table. And everyone deserves a seat at that table. The most magnetic people are not the ones who talk endlessly. They're the ones who create openings. The ones who leave space. The ones who ask questions that invite others in. What about you? How do you feel? What's your take on this? Tell me more about your side of things. These small questions are powerful. They say, "I see you. I value. I want to hear your voice too." People are drawn to those who make space for them, not just physically, but emotionally, not just with pauses, but with presence. If you want people to enjoy your company, remember this simple truth. The person who talks the least doesn't always know the least. The person who speaks the most isn't always the most wise. The person who listens well becomes unforgettable. Sarcasm is sharp, it's clever, it's quick, and when used sparingly, it can be funny, light, and playful. But when sarcasm becomes your default language, your shield, your comfort zone, your automatic response, it does something damaging. It turns connection into a battlefield. Some people use sarcasm to avoid vulnerability. Some use it to appear confident. Some use it because genuine emotional expression terrifies them, but beneath the wit and the smirk lies a truth most people never admit. Sarcasm is often armor disguised as humor, and armor always pushes people away. Think about the last time someone made a joke about you that wasn't really a joke. Maybe it was framed as teasing. "You're so sensitive. You always do that. I'm just kidding, relax." But your chest tightened, your stomach dropped, and something inside you whispered that didn't feel playful, that felt personal. People don't forget that feeling. When sarcasm becomes habitual, it chips away at emotional safety. It makes people flinch before speaking. It makes them question whether they can trust you with their soft places. And here's the most important part: sarcasm is often a substitute for intimacy. It lets you stay present without actually being present. It lets you talk without ever revealing yourself. It gives you closeness without vulnerability, but only for a moment, because sustained connection cannot grow in an environment where every word might be twisted into a punchline. So if you want to build relationships that last, try this shift. Speak plainly, speak gently, let your words carry warmth instead of wit, let sincerity replace defensiveness. Let vulnerability take the seat sarcasm has been sitting in for too long. Say things like, I care about you. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know you felt this way. Tell me more. You'd be amazed how quickly sincerity melts walls that sarcasm keeps standing. People gravitate to those who make them feel respected, not mocked, not minimized, not turned into material for someone else's humor. And when you start speaking with tenderness instead of sharpness, you'll notice something profound. People stop racing around you. They start breathing around you. There's a heaviness that settles in the air when every conversation circles back to how unfair life is, how nothing goes right, how everyone disappoints you. It's draining, not because people don't care about your struggles, but because emotional labor without reciprocity becomes suffocating. When someone constantly complains, something subtle happens. People stop listening and start enduring. They nod, they murmur, they offer sympathy, but deep down, they're pulling away inch by inch because the weight keeps increasing and the light never appears. And I want to say this with compassion because I know pain can make us talk in loops. Sometimes complaining feels like the only way to release pressure. Sometimes it feels like the world hasn't been fair to you, and maybe it hasn't. Sometimes feeling like a victim is the only way to make sense of your heartbreak, your disappointments, your losses. But here's the truth that changes everything. People can hold you when you're hurting, but they carry you every single day. Emotional support is a gift, not a permanent job. When conversations always revolve around what's wrong, what's broken, or who hurt you, people begin to associate your presence with heaviness, not comfort, not closeness, not connection, just heaviness. And nobody seeks heaviness. They only tolerate it until they can quietly exit. This doesn't mean you should hide your struggles. It doesn't mean you should pretend you're fine. It means share your pain, but also share your progress, share your frustrations, but also share your hopes. Share your struggles, but give people space to share theirs too. Connection is a two-way street, and both lanes need to stay open. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is asking yourself, am I venting to connect or venting to avoid healing? Because healing opens doors. Endless complaining closes them. People stay close to those who let light in, even a small flicker, a little hope, a little strength, a little willingness to grow. When you stop speaking from your wounds alone and start speaking from your wisdom too, you'll notice something miraculous. People don't just listen, they lean in. There's a special kind of discomfort that fills a room when someone keeps talking long after the emotional door has quietly closed. Not because they're bad or selfish or unkind, but because they're disconnected from the silent language. Every human speaks the language of emotional cues. Most people don't realize how much is said without words. A slight lean back, a distant glance, a softer tone, a shorter response, a sigh they didn't mean to let slip. These are not rejections, they are signals. Signals that someone is getting tired, overwhelmed, uninterested, or emotionally full. And when those signals go unseen or worse, ignored, it creates friction. People feel trapped in conversations they no longer have the energy for. They feel drained, guilty, or mentally cornered, and eventually they start distancing themselves from the person who never notices when the room shifts. Here's the truth we don't talk about enough. Emotional awareness isn't just a skill, it's a kindness, a generosity, a form of respect. When you read cues, you're telling someone, I'm paying attention to how you feel, not just what you say. I care about your energy, not just my need to talk. I'm aware of your comfort, not just my own urgency. That level of awareness is magnetic. The most emotionally intelligent people check in. They ask, is this a good time? Do you have the space for this conversation? Do you want to keep going or take a break? These questions may seem small, but they do something enormous. They give people permission to be human because everyone gets tired, everyone gets overwhelmed. Everyone hits emotional capacity. The difference is whether the people around them notice. When you learn to read the room, not in fear, but in empathy, your presence becomes grounding instead of draining, calming instead of chaotic, inviting instead of intrusive. And people return again and again to spaces where they feel emotionally seen, because feeling emotionally seen is one of the most intimate forms of connection we ever experience. There is a particular kind of emotional tension that enters a conversation the moment someone becomes defensive. It's subtle at first, a shift in posture, a tightening in the face, a tone that hardens like cooled glass. Suddenly, what was meant to be a gentle comment, a small observation, or even a neutral statement becomes the trigger for conflict. And here's the quiet truth most people won't say out loud. You cannot connect deeply with someone who feels attacked by every shadow of feedback. When someone takes everything personally, the people around them start walking softly, not out of respect, but out of fear of upsetting them, fear of being misunderstood, fear of conversations turning into emotional minefields. And once that fear enters the space, authenticity leaves, honesty leaves, playfulness leaves. People stop saying what they really think. They tiptoe, they edit themselves, they shrink. Why? Because they're not just managing the conversation anymore, they're managing you. And that's emotionally exhausting. But here's the deeper truth beneath all of this defensiveness is almost always rooted in old wounds, not present conversations, somewhere in your past. A voice told you were wrong or not enough or constantly criticized. And now, even gentle words feel like threats. But the people in your life today are not the people who hurt you then, and treating them like they are pushes them away, even when they're trying to love you. So here is a shift, a powerful, liberating shift. Pause before reacting. Ask yourself, is this comment meant to harm me or help me? Is this about the moment or about my past? Is this feedback or fear? When you stop treating every comment like an attack, something beautiful happens. People start relaxing around you. They open up. They tell the truth. They trust you with the parts of themselves that require gentleness, because connection requires softness, and softness is impossible in the presence of constant defense. When you lay down your armor, people finally get to meet the real you. And that real you is someone worth staying close to. The closing truth, transforming how people experience you. We've walked through 9 subtle habits that quietly push people away. And by now, I hope you feel something profound and stirring inside you. The power to change the way people experience your presence lies not in grand gestures, but in the smallest choices you make every single day. Here's the truth: humans are exquisitely sensitive to energy, tone, and intention. Your words, pauses, attentiveness, and even silences communicate more than you imagine. Every habit we've discussed, from talking to be heard, to dominating conversations, to ignoring emotional cues, sends an unspoken message about how you value others. And the most heart-wrenching part, you may not even realize it. But here's the beauty. Awareness is the first step toward transformation. Once you see how your habits impact others, you can consciously rewrite the story. You can choose empathy over self-centeredness. You can choose listening over lecturing. You can choose presence over performance. You can choose warmth over sarcasm, trust over defensiveness, understanding over criticism. Connection is not a magic trick. It is a commitment to human dignity. It is an everyday practice of showing up with curiosity, respect, and courage. It is the willingness to say, I see you, I hear you, you matter to me. Imagine the shift that occurs when every conversation leaves people feeling lighter, seen, and valued. Imagine a presence that doesn't just fill space, but enriches it. Imagine the kind of relationships that flourish because people don't just tolerate you, they actively seek your company. Here's the final, undeniable truth. People don't just remember what you said, they remember how you made them feel. And the way you make them feel starts with the quiet, subtle choices you make every day. So let this be your invitation to slow down, to notice, to listen, to speak with care, to pause before reacting, to let your presence be a safe harbor, not a storm. When you commit to these small, intentional habits, you don't just transform conversations, you transform lives, starting with your own. And when that happens, you become unforgettable, not because of what you said, but because of how deeply, tenderly, and courageously you made people feel.